Hello. So today I'm going to be doing another TNU Talks video. Basically, this is going to be explaining some of the core, like space hooberty-dooberty junk that is pretty much like the political landscape. I mean, mostly a lot of this is going to cover stuff that is irrelevant to the current story because, like, really there's like 4 or 5 governments that actually do anything. Everything is just kind of a subunit of one of those organizations. So I'm going to start off by explaining where the Galactic Federation came from. So, the Galactic Federation is a collaboration of, like, I want to say, I don't even remember how many governments were in the United Forces Alliance or the UUAR. But basically in like some of the documentation that I read on Memory Alpha a long ass time ago, it covered something about like 200 people or 200 races were in like the Federation. Now obviously, as you know, most of those are not even mentioned or anything like that. But like here, I mean, you have the United Forces Alliance, which is the kind of core part of the United Universal Alliance of Republics. Those two entities are meaningless because they all became basically what is the Federation. So anytime anything's referred to those, it means the Federation because it's, you look through like Star Trek super history mumbo jumbo crap, and you start finding out that like in like the 2700s, the government collapsed and like shit all over itself and exploded into 1,000 little chunks of government. And then around like the 32nd century, more things shit all over themselves and cracked into temporal wars and all this other junk. So, yeah, you've got hundreds of governments that all branched out into each other and then eventually all merged back into each other, and just ignore all of that. Because in like the 43rd century, they all joined together and created one huge government and then got all corrupted and went and created another government all over again. So basically, just anybody that was part of the UFA, the UUAR, they're all the Federation. So, Federation is the Federation. Awesome. The Federation is all the races it was before, except for some of them are dead, like the Zindi, things like that. Again, that was all covered in Star Trek, so don't ask me about that. Go watch episodes. Because also, we're so far in the future that a lot of that's just like, kind of like trying to find Roman history. Regardless of how many computer databases you have, you're eventually going to lose some of that information. So there are some races that were probably just lost in history, and we're just like, oh, well, they existed at one point. We know that they were a thing once, but now they're not a thing, and we don't know why. So, that aside, let's just try and make this as simple as possible. So we have the Galactic Federation, which is, those governments that I mentioned, and then the Terran Federation combined together, along with all the other races that were part of the Federation before, and some of the other ones that were discovered, which also are not mentioned. There's a lot of things that aren't covered, because the stories here pretty much mention humans, their allies, things like that. So you've got all these other races that are just like millions of light years away, and it just doesn't... they're not going to interact with the rest of the government. The government's so big that we're not dealing with like 20 light years of a sector anymore. We're dealing with massive expanses of space that it would take you years to travel one end to the other. So, yeah. AMC is a division of the Federation armed forces. I went over this in another video. So, what I'm going to do here, come over here. That doesn't exist anymore. That's part of this. This is dead. This is in another galaxy. This is part of this. This is part of this. This is part of this. Let's go over here. So, the Unified Council is a governing board. Pretty much think of them as kind of like a Senate committee, but the only difference is they're not senators, they are business people. And they manage Delta Force. And then they report to the Senate. And then Delta Force obviously has its own command structure, which that hasn't been updated on this page in forever. AMC is a part of Delta Force, like, you know how Starfleet has the Tactical Division, Engineering Division, blah blah blah. Think of AMC, they are literally just Delta Force's mech division. And they have Spec Ops training because, think about it this way. If you're some highly trained mech pilot and you crash on an enemy world, you don't want to get shot in the head by the enemy or captured by them and drug away and have all the information you have been given, sucked from you by some horribly bad device. The Klingon, Romulan, Cardassian fun thing. People say this is way too complicated, and a lot of that, ignore those threads, ignore the wiki, ignore the other stuff. Really, at this point, there's just a number of... So, the best way I can explain this, and I said it in the chat, there's the Romulan, Cardassian, Dominion, Klingon alliance. Part of the Klingon Empire branched off because, again, since Klingons and Romulans hate each other, that part of the Klingon Empire joined the Federation. And so you've got, like, pretty much kind of how you've got North and South Korea, you've got part of the Klingon Empire and another part of the Klingon Empire. And, yeah. So, I guess, let's do this. Okay, again, we have fun white space. I'm not a super space nerd, so I don't have some Star Trek maps sitting somewhere. So you've got your quadrants. Again, this is not to scale. I don't have a star map anywhere. All this is explored space now. I mean, there's a bunch of unexplored stuff, but if we just want to keep things simple. So, the Federation pretty much owns everything over here. Like everything. This is just Federation. The Aloris Alliance would kind of be the equivalent of you, like here. This is kind of half Federation, half Klingon, Cardassian. Well, no, the Klingons are down here, but like basically half of that alliance thing, and then half Federation. So, the Federation owns a lot of space. Like I said, they fucking, you could travel from one end to the other. From one end of the Federation to the other. It's inside of its borders. There's a reason there's the Outer Rim and the core planets. If you had a patrol division patrol from one end of the Federation to the other, it would probably take you 10 years. So, and keep in mind, Voyager's mission was what, 7 or something like that? Yeah, I don't think the Federation's sending out a bunch of Voyagers to go travel for 10 years to get from one end of space to the other. There's a reason they don't care about the borders. It's too big. But, whatever. So there's a bunch of tiny governments over here that just kind of... It's fucked up. And, I mean, so you have the Aloris Alliance, Klingon Cardassian stuff, bunch of broken governments. Federation kind of owns part of Klingon space, and then you've got the rest of Klingon space. And then there's a couple of other governments that are here that are also kind of not, no, they're not really involved in the story anymore. It's not to say people go about this and go, oh, well, what about blah, blah, blah? The TNU story pretty much focuses on the crews of the ships, the few politicians who are actually part of the story, and, like, the humans and stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not writing a political memoir here. So there's going to be a bunch of, like, oh, well, what about this? What about that? What about it? If you want to write about it, write about it. Show the writing council, and we might approve it. If there's something we're missing, write about it. I mean, what it comes down to is that the Aloris Alliance, the Klingon Cardassian Alliance thing, the Federation, and a bunch of small governments that, I mean, some of them don't give a damn, others are in constant skirmish wars with each other, and just pretty much, you don't deal with them, they don't deal with you, but if you enter their borders, they blow you up. Yeah. So, that's also why we don't go over there, because, I mean, yeah, we'll go into this sector, but it's like, we're not going to just wander into some government that is going to blow us up. That would be stupid. Plus, most of this story is following, the Federation's Defense Service. Yeah, we do a little bit of exploration, but that's the main Starfleet that does the exploration pieces. So, we aren't really going to be going out into these, oh shit, we're going to get blown up by some dude's mines because he is pissed off that we entered his borders and we're going to fucking cause a war because we walked into some guy's borders without permission because we didn't know where we were going. Pretty much we're dealing with inside the Federation's borders, or going outside of them minorly. Again, as I explained, it's like 10 years traveling from one end of this place to the other. So, I mean, most of what we're going to be dealing with is within the borders. I mean, even getting into the Aloris Alliance territory through a gate, the gate systems are now down, took the Lavi, when Missy was in command, if I remember right, took them 3 months to get there. And the gates are fast, bro. So, I mean, if we're talking 10 years of warp, at this day and age, So not warp, slipstream, gates, whatever. It's... I haven't focused on a lot of this stuff. And it's because, like I said, space is so big. There's going to be things that we don't know about that are happening out there. We fill that in when we get there. The political landscape really isn't as complicated as people try and make it. People just overthink it. Just like I overthink pretty much everything. The gist is, Klingon, Cardassian, Romulan, Dominion Alliance thing. The Aloris Alliance. Bunch of other little governments that I'm not going to say nobody cares about, but that are kind of a non-factor in the overall story of things. And then a bunch of factions within the Federation. Now, people are going to be like, oh, faction, blah, 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 blah. The main things inside of the Federation right now. Federation Starfleet. Obviously, Starfleet's exploration. Delta Force and its subdivisions are the military. So just think of anything that's like SAD, anytime you mention any military organization, just call it Delta Force, because that's just... separating it all just gets way too confusing, and really, it's meaningless. I mean, unless you're talking about Planetary Guard cops, pretty much anybody that gets sent to anything is going to be Delta Force. You're not going to be sending a bunch of ground soldiers without a support ship to an enemy planet to invade. So you're going to have a Delta Force ship there. So, oh, we sent a planetary security unit to go blah blah blah. Okay, you sent them with Delta Force. So you sent Delta Force on that mission. So you sent Delta Force. Alright, we're good. We don't need to explain any further. You sent Delta Force. You didn't send planetary security and a blah 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 in this division and that division. You sent Delta Force. Awesome. You sent the military. Good job. Congratulations. We're going to give you a gold star now, because you sent the military to go fight. Good job. I'm sounding kind of sarcastic, but that's because this isn't as complicated as it's being made. There's just a lot more terms for things that are mentioned than need to be mentioned. I mean, people start bringing up AMC, blah, blah, okay, they're all Delta Force. AMC is just Delta Force mech pilots. That's it. It's not that difficult. The Alchemy Commission is just Delta Force's science and tech and magical tech, whatever you want to call them, division. They're part of Delta Force. They're still the military. They're still soldiers. They're still soldiers and scientists sitting in a lab. They're just... It's like how the actual military has like 30,000 different... Oh, we have this regiment and that regiment and the 500th Haberderb Support Division of the Tactical Operations Unit of Editor. Okay, do we need to know that there's 700,000 divisions that are branched into 700 logistics? No. You're the army. I don't need to know that you have 60 regiments. I don't care about that. This video is probably going way too off in a tangent, but it's because I'm trying to explain something here, that there's complexness to this because there's complexness to the real world, but it's also not as complicated as it seems. I mean, if I started reading off Memory Alpha to people, they would realize how complicated the actual technical stuff is, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you start going and reading a bunch of the political blah blah blah, blah blah, it's not going to make sense to anybody. Something here. That's why I don't write a lot of it, because it's like, even Hukari doesn't deal with much of it. That's why she has this freaking building full of ambassadors They know more about politics than she does, and she leaves that to them, just like she leaves the lawmaking to the senators. Because even though they're all corrupt, they know better how to make law than she does. She fought war and saved the galaxy. So, yeah, they made her president. But, okay, does that mean she knows how to create law? Not really. Y'all are making this too complicated.